The objective here is to show you what's been happening in the IPP market in Nigeria, the possibilities that exist, and how you can be part of it. If, just as an introduction, we could look at the background. Okay. All right. It's my overview. We'll look at the resources we have in Nigeria that can support IPP operations. It's quite tremendous, something that will have you asking why is Nigeria say where it is. And if you look at the data here, crude oil, natural gas, coal and lignite, tar gas, large hydro potentials that exist, small hydro potentials, solar radiation, wind, biomass, nuclear element. I mean, it's mind-blowing. However, we are where we are. And
sorry, can you speak into the mic?
sorry. I say, however, we're where we are. And there's also been a lot of IPP activities going on in Nigeria. It's something that when you look at these figures, it really doesn't take the picture of power generation and what's happening in Nigeria. But this is the public sector power generation activities going on in Nigeria. On a daily basis, you have that amount of power. You have, of course, this was said yesterday, that's the peak that's been achieved recently. The average peak you see is about that. The stock capacity right now is actually 10,061 as of the end of January 2013. However, you can look at the gap between that installed capacity and the peak generation. It tells you something's amiss somewhere. The maximum available capacity we've had in 2012 was that at any given time. Out of those installed capacity, part of it is non-availability of gas to generation stations. Some, of course, are things about normal maintenance and repairs. IPP operation actually started in Nigeria in 1929 with the installation of a 30 megawatts plant in Jos, Kura Jos. That was done by NESCO, Nigerian Electricity Supply Corporation. There were a set of 3 hydro stations, run-of-the-river type, that supplied the tin mines and also supplied surrounding villages and towns. Then in 2000, we had AES coming. It actually started as Aaron. Then it was novated to AES. That was supposed to be a 270 plant, megawatts plant. Sorry, those things shifted a bit. That they started operating as badges. They brought them in as badge-mounted gas plants. And they've been running it up to now. The contract they have was for 13 years, 3 months, which is going to end sometime next year, around November next year. Then you have the Transamadi plant, about 136 megawatts, that came into Rivers. After that, you had the Upbuy by Ajip, then Afam by Shell, then Omoku, again in Rivers State. Then another 150 megawatts, which was commissioned last year in Rivers State. You can see that actually there's been a number of IPP activities happening in Nigeria. Then Notere is the fertilizer plant. He also wants to get involved with it. He wants to expand its captive power plant to start exporting to the national grid as IPP. Same thing with Dangote in Obajana and a number of other plants in that mode. If you look at, from the greater point of view, we've had quite a number of IPP licenses. What we call the off-grid license has been given mainly for people who supply industries and all that. You have quite that market thriving in Nigeria. Actually, I will explain that. I've looked at it from the point of view of about 4 segments of IPP market happening in Nigeria. You have the off-grid. You have the off-grid that is below the threshold of licensing. You also have the embedded generation, and you have the main IPP grid-connected plant. That's the kind of thing you have. What I've shown here is for just one of the off-grid IPP operating in Nigeria. This is actually for a company called Set Power. And it shows their customers in various parts of Nigeria and some of their facilities, workshops, and power plant and spare holding yards where they're located in Nigeria. This company has been doing quite a lot of business for a while now. What are these policies that support IPP? Assuming you want to get into the IPP market in Nigeria, do we have policies that support you? Are there legislation? Are you protected in any way? Yeah. Here I have tried to look at the kind of legislation you've had in the power industry for a while. In 1959, we had the British give the legislation on ECN that established the Electricity Corporation of Nigeria. And this company started electrifying various major towns in Nigeria using diesel-fired plants, coal-fired plants, and such like. In 1962, there was the Niger Dam Act that allowed development of hydro resources. In 1972, these 2 companies were merged and became the National Electric Power Authority. And as the National Electric Power Authority, it was the sole authority to produce, transmit, and distribute electricity. In 1993, there was a draft Nigerian energy policy which was focused, gave the direction that you need to promote private sector participation in the energy industry in Nigeria. In 2000, Nigerian electric power policy was launched, and again stressed private sector participation in the industry. In 2004, the NEETs program also stressed this. That's again another policy. In 2005, we now have the actual legislation on, that reformed the industry, the way it's going now, and gave a new direction that you've heard about from the speakers that spoke yesterday on bundling, bringing in private sector participation, and actually making official that the private sector will participate in Nigerian power industry moving forward. It will actually be the driving force behind the development of power in Nigeria. In 2008, the National Domestic Gas Policy, Gas Supply and Pricing Policy was launched by President Yaradua. The essence is to also support the activities of IPPs, at least make sure that the infrastructure people will use when they come to develop IPPs in Nigeria exists and is there. In 2010, there was the Power Reform Roadmap to fast-track some of the aspirations of government. In 2012, that is last year, towards the end of last year, around December last year, they started a review of the roadmap to fine-tune it, to look at what has been achieved so far, and then fine-tune it to meet the new challenges. What are the structures that exist? The governance structures, you have the Prime Minister of Power, now focused on making policy, carry out studies on things like existing resources and support research in that area, and bringing required interventions based on recommendations they see from their studies and things like that. Federal Ministry of Environment and the NEC, that's the law created a regulator, and that was the Nigerian Electric Regulatory Commission. They have actually been very active in doing things, and they have actually done a lot to make sure that IPPs can play in the market. They have brought regulations for the captive IPP embedded and display regulation, and quite a lot of other things, codes and standards, the grid code, the metering code, and a lot of other things that will support IPP operation in Nigeria. The TCN is there. That is the Transmission Company of Nigeria. The Transmission Company of Nigeria gives unfettered access to the network. It can focus on network development. It's also the company that at the present moment is doing system plan and operations. Again, it also does the market operations aspect of the market, the power market. The distribution companies, the DISCOs, have ensure network planning, development and operation, and also ensure that they deliver power to their clients. MBET, as you heard yesterday, is basically doing power brokerage for IPPs, buys your power. If you are delivering power to the grid and you want to deal directly with them, you can also, from the regulation that is on ground, deal directly with distribution companies right now in Nigeria. And MBET also provides securitization for the IPPs. The other structures you have is Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. This will help you fast track establishing a company in Nigeria. Right now, you can actually start a company in a day in Nigeria, especially if you go to Abuja, with as low as $100. This is what the Nigerian wholesale electricity market looks like. It's quite interesting. You have the NDPC plant on your left here, or my left on your right, on your left here. You have that. That is a set of 10 plants that are being developed by a multi-government establishment. It's owned by 3 governments: federal, state, and local governments. They are developing them to sell them later this year. Most of these plants have been commissioned, and they're going to be sold later this year. Then the PSCM plants have, of course, been sold. They are just going through the process of handing over to the new buyers. Then you have some state government plants that's been developed. Then you have the IPPs that we talked about earlier. And then you have the captive power IPPs too. All go to Transmission Company of Nigeria. You have some captive customers there, the big industries that go for captive power. And some of them are connected only to have IPPs supplying them completely. Some take supply from the 2 sides. You also have embedded generation in Nigeria, where some IPPs are dealing directly with these distribution companies and supplying them. And you also have what we call the independent AC distribution network operators. So what you have is that. Now, what are the figures that come out of this market? In 2012, the wholesale electricity market was valued at 255 billion naira. That's about 1.7 billion US dollars. And the captive IPP, these figures come from the market operations invoices in 2012. The captive power IPP market is estimated to be about 9.8 billion naira, or about 0.6 billion US dollars for 2012. The below licensing threshold, these are IPPs that do not require licenses. They work between 13 to 44 kilowatts. They mainly supply the telecom market in Nigeria. It's quite a large group of that. That market is estimated at 74.46 billion naira, or about $0.49 billion. Then you have the embedded IPP market. This is quite a small market. You have just very few players in this market right now, but it's expanding. We hear that from NEC that a lot more people are asking to be embedded IPPs. That's for 2012 was worth about 3.5 billion naira. That's about 23 million US dollars. IPP pro services. Of course, basically they do real power, but the ones that are connected to the grid are also required by the grid code to also provide peak power services, reserve power, spinning reserve, and all that, for which they're going to be paid by the system operator. Power quality, voltage and frequency regulation services, and we have had a number of grid collapses, so black star services, which also will require some form of payment. These are the kind of services they can also offer beyond just supplying real power to the network. Of course, these things come with things like investment in these areas. You need people to finance, you need EPC contractors, you need people to finance these operations. You need legal services for the agreements and contracts that need to be signed. You need, to run them, you need equipment and spares, suppliers. You need maintenance and service maintenance and operation services. Community relations, in quite a lot of places, you have this as an issue. And you have people who right now seem to be very good at this, maintaining good relations between these operators and the communities in which they operate. You have now issues of regulation, compliance, and all that, and good compliance services market is beginning to develop. Of course, you can also looking at new technologies that improve the efficiencies of machines. There are people who are beginning to offer these services, who come around to offer these services. And as you can see, the IPP market in Nigeria is not just, the power market in Nigeria is not just the public sector issue, it's a lot more than that. Some hydro potentials that government is looking at possibly going to advertise for expression of interest from the private sector. We have about 10 of them, but I've shown a bit of it here. Gurara 2, which is supposed to be about 300 megawatts. Mambila, that's about 3,050 megawatts, based on the studies that's been carried out. Goma, Chalawa, Oyan. So a number of these will be advertised later this year. And anybody interested in IPP could look at that and see how we can, the ones that will interest him. Again, we have the Recurring Agency, REA, looking at private sector participation for deployment of renewable solutions to remote rural villages. We have what we call the Rural Education Fund, and the law says that they can't do projects themselves. They must do projects either as a PPP or just find a private sector that would, a player who they will support and who will do that. And they are looking at, since most of these villages are remote, they are looking at renewables as a solution to bringing power access to the communities in those areas. The challenges. I must be candid, there are some challenges that IPPs face. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of IPP players already in Nigeria, and money is being made in it. So I'm candid, there are some challenges, and it doesn't mean that you can't play. It only means that these are things you face in trying to bring your project to fruition. You have security issues. We've had cases of vandalization of pipes. Vandals go and blow up the pipeline, thinking they will try to tap into it. They will tap into the wrong pipeline, like the gas pipeline, when they are trying to see if they can siphon some crude. So we have that happening from time to time. And what it means to an IPP down the distance is that he may not have gas to run his plant, or the pressure may not just be enough to support his obligation. You have some issues of regulatory clarity we want to, which has been put before the regulator. Like the embedded generation says you can only export a maximum of, you can only have a maximum of 20 megawatts. Now, the question is, and export 20 megawatts on a line, 30 kV line. So questions are asked, what if we have 100 megawatts and we have several attached KV lines and want to remain as embedded? Some of these questions have not yet been cleared. But one thing is clear: if you don't want that this thing, you can just stick with 20 megawatts and be embedded in any disco and work with them. Transmission infrastructure inadequacy. Like I said, we have installed capacity, or we have available capacity that's much bigger than what we're exporting. And anytime we try to export more, we find it's not possible. And this has been traced to the wheeling corridors, because most of the power plants are in a certain part of the southeast. So you don't have enough wheeling corridors. But right now, infrastructures have been developed. NIPP is putting quite a lot, and also TCN is also putting in a lot. They have just completed 2 other lines between Onitsha and Benin, where we've had quite a number of issues. And they also bring in some double circuit lines from Port Harcourt area, where you have a lot of the plants that's being developed right now by NIPP. So we expect that by the end of this year, we'll be able to export more than 7,000 megawatts into other areas from the location of this. But as we are now, we have some constraint if you are going to some parts of this thing. Financial, we have some wholesale market shortfall. In 2005, as I showed earlier, the wholesale market was what, 255 billion naira. The electricity retail market, the retail electricity market was what, about 330 billion naira. However, what was recovered from the market was about 213 billion. So we had a shortfall of about 30%. That's loss. So what it means is that everybody's not getting their payments as and when should. So the government plans for now are taking the beating. And that is for people who are connected to the IPPs are connected to the facilities, public facility. But for IPPs that are working with either as embedded or working with captive industries, they don't have this problem. They get paid their money 100%. Human capacity, we have challenges. You find that you don't have enough manpower going around for all the people that and all the things that are happening right now. So recently, government started a program to train 700 young graduates, which training will end in the next 2 months. We're in April, by June. They have put them through a number of skills, including protection, installation of power equipment, maintenance, and a number of other things, making sure they get the best skills they can give. Well, but it may not be enough. By estimates, we need hundreds and hundreds of engineers to work in the sector as we move from where we are now to about 40,000 megawatts, which is government's first target of power which they want to provide. Gas supply. Right now, the gas supply is not adequate. And as the plants, the PSM plants that are sold are also improved, because the sales agreement is that these guys will recover lost capacities. So as they replace the units that are not functioning or that are moribund, we expect that the gas requirement for the existing plants, the new plants that have just been commissioned, and the IPPs that are running, now will be about 3 billion scf per day. Right now we're doing about 1.something billion scf. And the NNPC managing director had promised that we'll have another 1 billion by the end of this year. So there's still, but this does not stop IPP activities. You have independent gas producers like Seven Energy and a number of others who people have contracted with and who provide services. However, it's at a higher level, at a higher cost than the national pricing policy says, because they are independent. They are not within the framework that was envisaged by the national gas pricing and supply policy. Of course, looking at the IPP market in Nigeria, you find that most of them are actually using diesel or gas. Government want to see more of other resources, solar, wind, or others coming into the mix. That is the gas demand issue I just talked about. It shows, you can see what the old PSM plants are using, what is expected of the NIPP plants, and what's expected when these new plants, these old PSM plants, when their old capacities are brought back. So you see that we're expecting quite a lot more gas will be used. And right now, again, there's the issues of the pipelines to some of the places people might want to do their IPP. Well, way forward, what's been happening and where IPPs have played a great deal of part in Nigerian power market has been in the captive power market. You find that the cement industries, the bottling plants, and quite a lot of other industries that are working in Nigeria right now have IPPs providing power for them. And that's been actually one of the things that's been driving the IPP market in Nigeria. We also believe that in meeting the aspirations of communities that are very far away from the grid, who are desirous of power, a lot of them are, and that's part of the reason why the independent distribution network operator regulation was made by NERC, that diversifying the fuel mix or the resource base will help. So things like solar could come more into the mix. Improvement of infrastructure, gas and power would help a lot to facilitate IPP activity, because if we have more gas pipelines, right now we're doing a pipeline to the north. The one that goes to the middle belt, Geregu, has been completed, so it's moving on to Kaduna. And we hope that people can, and when it got to Geregu, it had spurred on about 5 IPPs trying to locate around Ajokuta area. So we hope that as it goes to Kaduna to feed the Kaduna power plant that's been built now, 250 megawatts power plant in Kaduna, that it will also spur in IPP development around its corridor. Then embed capitalization and mitigation arrangement. Yesterday, the General Counsel for embed talked about this. What in reality government has tried to do is raising a $1 billion infrastructure bond, and is going to use this as part of the capitalization for embed to ensure that embed is able to meet or bridge the gap between whatever the market can collect and what the IPP is need to be paid for a while as the market closes and new player, as the private sector players take over and market becomes more efficient, so that they can pay that before the market becomes self-sustaining. NAPTIN is the Power Training Institute that is supposed to help develop and the manpower provide the services for the district. We also need greater funding for developing this gas infrastructure and the transmission infrastructure, so that more and more power can be wheeled by what is existing. Better legislation to ensure that the gas market is also self-sustaining. Government have been looking at the PIB, Petroleum Investment Bill, and if that is it's right now before the National Assembly. If that bill is passed, it would show in a clearer way how the fuel supply for thermal power plants that run on gas would go, and you could form better relationships with the fuel suppliers. In conclusion, we can say that IPPs can be used to meet Nigerians' power needs in both the short term medium and long-term basis. Short-term, we're looking at some of the people that are doing below license threshold power services, then the captive market, and even on the medium term, because on the medium term you can see that at least you can defer the development of some transmission infrastructure with IPP in some areas and use that for a while, at least while it's running on gas. And in long term, the big IPPs will continue to be there and actually is the way to go in the future. Opportunity exists in this regard and will continue to be there for a long time. Thank you.